Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military with Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about another massive missile and drone strike that took place during the night between the 2nd and the 3rd of September of 2025, and by the morning of the 3rd of September the pro-Ukrainian resources published this picture where we can see how exactly the Russians were attacking the territory of Ukraine. And when talking about this map, we see that the Russians were using drones of Giran type. These are yellow lines. The Russians use cruise missiles Ha-101. We are talking about red lines. And the Russians attacked the western part of Ukraine with green lines. We are talking about the Caliber missiles that were launched by the Caliber carriers from the Azov Sea or from the Black Sea. So lots of explosions, as you can see, were recorded. The Russians attacked the western part of Ukraine, the cities of Lutsk, Lvov and Khmelnytsky. Several explosions were recorded in the central part of Ukraine. We're talking about the city of Kiev and the settlement of Krapivninsky. And the Russians attacked the area of the major battle in the area of the cities of Pokrovsk and Kramatorsk. So very heavy explosions were recorded there as well. Ukrainians, as we know, are trying to redeploy additional forces there with the purpose to stabilize the situation. So most likely this is the reason why the Russians were attacking the Ukrainians there. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine provided us a very interesting article regarding the situation with their air defense and its work during the previous night. According to this article, during the previous night, the Russians used 526 air vehicles to attack Ukraine. We are talking about drones and missiles altogether. At the same time, the Ukrainians are saying that they managed to bring down just 451 target, and we see the gap is 75 air vehicles that most likely managed to get the target. So once again, as for the morning of the 3rd of September of 2025, we still haven't received pictures, videos or something like this that can confirm damage that the Russians managed to deal. Most likely during the upcoming day we're going to receive everything we need, and then during the next video we will discuss everything in details. As for the morning of the 3rd of September, the only thing we know is that the Russians once again were trying to attack the plants and military facilities in the western part of Ukraine that Ukraine used to produce parts for drones and missiles. Now, before we're moving to the line of combat contact, I would like to discuss with you several very important political updates and statements. And first, let's talk about the Russian Federation. During the previous 24 hours, the head of the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, stated that for a lasting settlement in Ukraine, it is necessary to recognize and formalize at the international level the entry of Crimea, Sevastopol, the DPR, LPR, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions into Russia. Moscow expects to continue negotiations with Kiev. The heads of delegations are in direct contact. So this is very important, and this is one of the most important demands from the Russian side. The Russians want not just Ukraine to recognize these territories as a part of the Russian Federation. First of all, Russia wants the Western countries, the European countries, NATO countries, and of course United Kingdom, France, Germany, the United States of America to recognize all these territories as a part of the Russian Federation, and this is something that most likely will be never accepted by the Western countries, which means that the special military operation can last for another several years. Now let's move to China. We have very important economical deals, science contracts that were signed by China and Russia. Very interesting article was published regarding the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline. Russia and China signed deal to advance Power of Siberia 2 pipeline. Russia and China signed a legally binding memorandum on Tuesday to advance construction of the long-delayed Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, a project that would cement Bayan rose as Moscow's most important energy customer as it seeks to replace lost European markets. The deal was one of four agreements struck between Russia's state energy giant Gazprom and the China National Petroleum Corporation. So this is very important message. It's not just something like a contract, it's a message that China sends to the United States of America. So let's discuss this. China's response to US demands has been heard. Washington has been demanding and continues to demand that China and India stop buying Russian hydrocarbons, threatening them with hefty tariffs. And here's China's response: increased purchase through existing gas pipelines, construction of new gas pipelines, with a free travel for Russian citizens. We see that China made its choice and Russia and India are the choices of China. So most likely we're gonna see additional layer of escalation between the United States of America, China and India. Donald Trump made lots of statements about the situation, and he told that he's very disappointed with Putin, and he is not just very disappointed with Putin, he see that Putin and the leader of North Korea are making some deal against the United States of America or something like this. Anyway, lots of interesting updates are ahead of us, especially regarding the special military operation and the situation in Ukraine. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. We have lots of very interesting updates, and first let's start with the Pokrovsk agglomeration. During the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, several very interesting changes on the ground were recorded. First, let's talk about the settlement of Udachne. I would like to remind you that yesterday we discussed the village when Ukrainians counterattack with the purpose to make another flag install or flag of tick episode, media episode, and we have some interesting geolocations. And for example, this moment, Ukrainian grenade launcher attacked position of the armored force Russian Federation, and this episode took place here. So we came to the conclusion that everything to the east of this point most likely is under complete Russian control. So that is why we colored this territory as a territory under Russian control. Now let's move further. As for the city of Pokrovsk itself, there are very heavy clashes right now, and today pro-Ukrainian resources published this video. Here we can see the 25th Airborne Brigade of the Armed Forces Ukraine at work. We see how they were FPV droning and attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the territory of this butterfly stronghold. I would like to remind you that this stronghold was taken according to several pro-Russian resources several days ago, but we were keeping this territory as a contested area, and today, as you can see, we got first geolocation that confirms Russian complete control over the territory, so the area was colored in Russian favor. Furthermore, the Russians continue advancing further in the northern direction with the purpose to take under control the villages of Chunushina and the settlement of Novopavlovka to the south of the city of Pokrovsk, and the Russians are advancing. But probably the most important and the most interesting, and maybe at some, let's say, point, very funny piece of news regarding the battle of the city of Pokrovsk is that today lots of pro-Ukrainian resources began publishing this video. The pro-Ukrainian resources are saying that the Russians, this information hasn't been confirmed yet, so I'm not saying that this is 100% true, but very reliable pro-Ukrainian resources are spreading this video and trying to tell us that the Russians during the previous 24, 48 or 72 hours carry out another pipeline operation on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk. The Russians managed to walk through this pipeline and to leave or to answer the city of Pokrovsk in its central part. The Ukrainians are in panic. They stated that Russian soldiers were already recorded, have been already recorded in the central part of the city. So today, most likely, we're going to see a very interesting and funny day. Because if this information is correct, then it's obviously complete collapse and disaster in Ukraine understanding of defense operation. This is, you know, that it could be, it wasn't be so funny if this situation wasn't the first one. The Ukrainians the Ukrainians missed the Avdiivka pipeline operation, the Toretsk pipeline operation, the Sudzha pipeline operation, and now the Russians probably carry out the Pokrovsk pipeline operation. So for the biggest, the most important breakthroughs that the Russians managed to achieve were achieved during another pipeline operation. So it's already funny. If it's true, I believe that Siversk must be resigned immediately. As for the eastern flank of the city of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, the Russian sources published this video where we can see how Russians were bombing the city of Mirnograd from its southern part. Lots of explosions were recorded. I would like to remind you that according to information we have, since the beginning of this week, there have been heavy clashes recorded between Russians and Ukrainians, especially in this area of the settlement of Novoekonomichne. Now let's discuss the situation in the area of Russian breakthrough. I would like to remind you that somewhere at the beginning of August, the Russians launched an offensive operation that allowed them to break through Ukrainian defense, and during the previous nights, during the previous 12 hours, several pro-Russian resources adjusted their maps, showing that most likely Ukrainians indeed managed to improve their positions and to force to fall back Russians from some very important positions in the area of Zolotoy Kolodets. So this line of breakthrough was taken, and the Russians were forced to fall back from the Toretsk direction. But at the same time, the Russians saved control of, let's say, main territories in this area, and the Russians began their own counterattacks with the purpose to improve their positions around the Shakhovo pocket and around the settlement of Dorozhny. So, very interesting situation. Let's wait and see what is going to be next. As for the N32 roads, the Russian resources published this video where we can see how two Russian soldiers raised their flag in the central part of the settlement. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village was taken by the Russians a long time ago, but just this morning we got another video, another confirmation that this indeed happened. So this flag was raised exactly in this point. So as for now, I'm not saying anything. I'm not telling you anything. I'm not sure whether it's real progress on the ground. The territory was colored in Russian favor a long time ago, but very difficult situation, because we know that now both the Russians and the Ukrainians use this flag of thick situation. Sometimes they can just establish a flag with the purpose to make a video, and that's it. So of course we are waiting for additional updates, and we are waiting whether the Russians are going to move further in the northern direction and improve their positions further in the northern direction. Now let's move further. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, several interesting videos were recorded. Here we can see how Russians were bombing the northern bank of the Kliban-Bytske water reservoir. Most likely Ukrainians still use this water reservoir for, let's say, purposes to send troops in the southern directions to the settlement of Kliban-Byk. Ukrainian sources published video from Alexandra Shultina. Here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians. This is very important because this video is another confirmation that the Russians established complete control over Alexandra Shultina and over its western and the northwestern parts. So the village is under complete Russian control, and there's just one pocket left in this area, and most likely the Russians will concentrate themselves in this direction. Now let's move to the north, and let's talk about the Siversk direction. During the previous 12 hours, very important updates we received. And first of all, I would like to remind you that just yesterday the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians took under complete control the settlement by the name of Fedorovka. This village was taken, and this is the situation by the end of the 1st of September. By the end of the 2nd of September, the village was secured, and during the night, several very reliable pro-Russian resources reported that the Russians continued advancing. They secured the settlement of Perezhnya. The Russians took under control several trenches and positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in fields, and the Russians continue advancing further towards the settlement of Kuzminovka and Zvanovka. So it seems that indeed the Russians launched their major offensive operation with the purpose to attack the city of Siversk from the south and from the southwest. So this is very interesting because course, now we see that the city of Siversk is very important target for the Russians, and most likely during the 2025 we are going to see the final battle for the territory, and not just for the city of Siversk, of course, also we are going to see the battle for the city of Liman. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes on my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.